City manager, it looks like.
Okay, I want to call this meeting to order. This is the meeting agenda for the Downtown Reinvestment Zone number 3. Mrs. Huerta, would you please call roll?
Chairman Mike Pesley.
Here.
Board members Roland Barrera.
Here.
Sylvia Campos. Here. Barbara Canales is absent. Paulette Guajardo is absent. Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Susan Hutchison is absent. Jim Klein.
Here.
Everett Roy.
Here.
James Sedgwick is absent. Dan Suckley.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum present to conduct the meeting, sir.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, council. Welcome, everybody. We'll move to public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to make a public comment this morning? Okay. If not, we'll move to item D, the approval of the minutes. Does anyone would like to make any changes to the minutes for the last meeting, which was the November 15th, 2022 regular meeting? If not, I'll entertain a motion to pass those.
There's two sets of minutes, sir, the 15th and December 6th.
I'm sorry?
There are two sets of minutes,
Okay,
November 15th and December the 6th.
Okay, I see now. Sorry about that.
No worries.
No change?
I move that we pass both.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion, comments? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. It's my understanding we do not have an executive session today, is that correct? Unless we absolutely need one.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll move the financial report. Heather?
Okay. Good morning, Heather Hilbert, Director of Finance. So today we'll be reviewing the financial statements for the 2 months ended November 30th, 2022. So our estimated beginning balance of our fund balance is $6.2 million. This isn't an audited balance. We are in the process of going through our audit. We do not anticipate any significant changes to that balance. Our revenues collected year to date are $722,000. Our expenditures years to date are $124,000. Our ending fund balance as of November 30th is $6.8 million. Right now, we have commitments remaining to be paid, and this is over a series of multiple years of a little over $5 million, leaving a balance available for commitments of $1.6 million. So looking at just a high-level cash flow of the TIRZ, we have estimated revenues this year of $2.4 million. This shows the breakout of when our incentives that have been committed will be paid out over the next 5 years. What our estimated administrative expenses is, and then what our estimated ending fund balance is. This is very good for those that are new to the TIRZ. This is a very good tool to use for planning as we look at paying out incentives over multiple years. Then looking more specifically into the incentives and commitments that we have, these are our project-specific development commitments. These are a rebate of property taxes as the business pays the property taxes, and over the increment that was created by the improvement, a portion of that, 75% of that is rebated them over a period of several years, each year as the property taxes are paid. Our vacant property improvement, we currently have 3 different projects, the Ward Building, the Retrocade, and the Preston. These are for improvements to vacant property, the activation of vacant properties. We have 3 projects under our Downtown Living Initiative, which is at the 600 building, the Northwater Apartments, and the Preston. Our commercial tenant finish out, which is a very popular program. We have multiple commitments. Hype Bike actually has already been paid out. I believe we paid that out in December, as these are November financials. And we will be paying out the Executive Surf Club and the Central Kitchen very soon. Looking at our Street, State, and Safety Improvement Program, again, this is a very popular program that is utilized downtown. We have multiple commitments there, and these are all or in process right now. So that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Questions? Okay, see none. We'll move on. Thank you,
Okay,
Heather.
thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item agenda number G5, election of officers. We need to appoint a vice chair. And again, I want to thank the board for appointing me as chair of this committee. I'm very excited about that and something I've wanted to do for a long time. I'm very committed to our revitalization of downtown. I'll entertain nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Everett Roy as vice chair.
Second.
Any other nominations? If not, I'll close nominations and open up for a motion to appoint Councilman Everett Roy as the vice chair of the Downtown TIRZ.
So moved.
I second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Roy. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 6, motion to approve the Streetscape and Safety Improvement Program reimbursement agreement for the Saval Dental Bay Area PLLC. Who's going to make that presentation? Alyssa?
Good morning, Chairman, and I believe we are still doing a presentation for item number 3. We are just doing it here in open session
Okay.
versus in
You-
executive session.
All right, we're going to go back to item 3, which was originally planned to be an executive session, but we decided we were going to do it for open session. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So the item before you is an update on the Project Retro, which is going in the location that was formerly the Aria nightclub in downtown Corpus Christi. This property has been vacant since about 2014, and so we're very excited to have Freddie Rodriguez, who is reinvesting in Corpus Christi. He originally grew up in this area, served in the military, has been working in Houston as a firefighter, and started a real estate, an insurance company, and has chosen to come down and reinvest in downtown Corpus Christi. So we're very grateful for Freddie's investment. So this project is a family-friendly arcade and sports bar. He's completed and paid for all of the facade improvements and is requesting that we complete the reimbursement for the exterior improvements while they continue to work on finishing out the interior of the property to get that official certificate of occupancy. The interior incentive is $100,000 and the exterior incentive is $69,000. The project is due to be completed in March. Here are some before and after photos of the property. So you can see the former Aria site has been just really closed up, dreary, and not very attractive, really kind of a source of blight over the years as the building has continued to degrade, right, without any active investment and maintenance. But you can see here, Freddie has installed entirely new doors, windows, lights, signs, paint, and really beautified the exterior. Here's the other side of the block where you can see the improvements, has reinstalled windows, and of course that wonderful blade hanging sign really just kind of activates that corner. This is actually not the before photo. Previously, this side of the building was just had a lot of kind of drainage and staining from the way that the patio was draining, and so he spruced that up and painted it like a really interesting bright purple. It is not black, despite the way it may be showing on the screen. And then security and lighting. So this was something that was really important to us. It's important to us with all of our reinvestment zone projects, but this corner had previously had 3 vacant buildings and then the Cosmopolitan office, which was closed at night. So despite us putting lights on the trees out there and trying to create a lot of activity, it was just difficult to compete with the fact that it was overwhelmingly dark and really didn't feel safe to walk around. So you can see with the additional improvements that Freddie has done, lighting along the overhang and then all along the northern side of the building, it creates an entirely different experience for a pedestrian. Additionally, there are security cameras on the exterior. And so at the DMD, we're recommending the payout for the streetscape portion at this point in time, and then holding the remaining until the completion of the C of O
And we wanted to provide, so city staff recommendation is to not, this would set a precedent of splitting up a program. The way the contract is written is that both programs are contingent on a C of O. And previously, we have not split a contract like this. So our recommendation is not to split it up, even though DMD is recommending to, so.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah,
Yes, Ms. Pardo?
yeah. So let's go back to, pardon me, and I'm sorry, I've got a very raspy voice this morning. When you say splitting up, so what, I mean, I think you're talking more reimbursement for expenses he's already incurred,
Yes, ma'am.
so he's already invested in. And you're talking about the agreement. So can you just,
Sure. So the contract is written that both programs, so he was eligible to receive incentive and reimbursement from two different programs. The way the contract was written was that both programs were eligible for reimbursement at the attainment of C of O. So when the building was able to, or the business was able to start. And that is traditionally how we have written those. A lot of times the streetscape programs, if they're by themselves, don't require a C of O because the streetscape wouldn't require a C of O. But we wrote this contract so that both programs trigger off of the C of O and be eligible for reimbursement. It is something that we will definitely look at going forward when we write those contracts, that maybe we can not have that trigger, that when streetscape is finished, that we could then reimburse separately from any type of building improvement. But this contract was not written that way. And so
Right.
staff feels like it sets a precedent of possibly, modifying the contract after it's been awarded.
It's about, can I just add to Heather's comments, it's about the risk of the project being completed. And so in fact, the next item is a project that we paid money to before it was completed, and it's not gonna get completed. So the taxpayer money is put at risk, the project doesn't open. And so that's what Heather's saying on this one, that
Yes.
until the project's ready to go, there's a CO.
okay, but what does it mean if we don't? And I'm not saying, I guess it's working with the particular, I think the next situation is a little different than what this one is in terms of the reimbursement of expenses made versus a whole nother situation that we're gonna go into, I guess, on this next item. But Alyssa, what is your statement in terms of, why go on, not against, but,
So the-
it
so the
really is.
contrary, yeah.
Yeah,
To
so
the
the reason-
contrary, that's a great word.
Yes, ma'am. So, right, we initiated this action, right? So we didn't initiate it with the understanding that staff wasn't going to support it. We came forward to
Yeah.
put this on the agenda to discuss with the board, to kind of get
Yeah.
support, because we understood this was a little bit of an exception. But I think the reasoning behind, in our eyes, the reason it made sense is because with small business and in economic development, we do need to understand the nuance and the way that these projects are kind of ebbing and flowing and responding to different movements in the market. With this building in particular, the developer has kind of incurred, and we're still trying to kind of understand the reasoning, but there have been some challenges that have come up related to the fire suppression system. So whether it was functioning when he bought it or monitoring ceased or something along those lines, things got a little complicated. And so there's about $50,000 in extra expense that he didn't budget, additional overruns inside of the building. And so we didn't feel, kind of to Heather's point, we didn't want to rush it with a temporary C of O and try to recommend payment of the full project. But since the exterior improvements were complete, we thought that that fit within the letter of how we intend these programs. If it's an already established business, we don't require a C of O for the streetscape payout. And the fact that the work has been completed and you see an improvement there. I think that is that was the logic behind our recommendation here.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sharon.
And I was going to say, a clarification is, we're not recommending that we don't pay it out. We recommend that we pay it out after the C of O has been obtained and the building is ready for operation, or the business ready for operation.
But the fire system has to be repaired before the C of O is obtained. Does that, so like the fire requirements are now like a hurdle in front of the C of O that the developer is working through. So if we can help provide some resources for work he's already completed in order to obtain that C of O, that's the type of kind of bobbing and weaving that we do with these projects in order to keep them successful and get them open.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa.
Councilman Barrera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple things. What was the total budget on the project, the initial budget on the project?
So the total project is over a $2 million project, and the budget for the exterior improvements was about $138,000. They've expended to date about $180,000 on the exterior.
180,000. And how much have they expended on, to date? I know that. I need to be taller or something. This, Peter has to look over.
It's these wonderful chairs that were bought in 1908 that we're still utilizing. So, you know,
I like these chairs. Just for the record, I want my chair when we change them out.
yeah.
So we understand that they've spent about $1 million on the interior finish out.
Okay. And then he's leasing the property, right?
He purchased the property.
He purchased the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he's a property owner. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's good. Okay, so, or Amy or Heather, how many other projects or contracts, I should say, would be at risk for amendment if we made this exception?
So,
I'll let Amy
but basically what we're doing is we wrote this contract, the project we wanted, we didn't just want to activate the outside, we wanted to activate the entire building. Typically, when it's a vacant building, even on a streetscape, we do require a C of O in order to pay out, because the point is to activate the building. I'm not sure how many we have that are written this way, but this would be changing the precedent of the board, which has been for a vacant building to require a C of O.
I understand, but, you know, Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, did you say that we're gonna look at how we can modify this in the future? So we're gonna modify this in the future because we recognize that this is an opportunity. I mean, there's been a substantial investment. So my point is, though, is that if we set this precedent, then how many other contracts would
As a note to that comment, the recommendation from my office is to never pay out until the project is completed. So that's our recommendation.
Okay, you still haven't answered my question.
How
Quit
many-
being a lawyer.
How many active projects do we have? I don't know.
I mean, I
Currently,
read somewhere there's 15 active projects
15.
downtown, so probably you could say a dozen.
A dozen?
so
Yeah, it's probably a
current-
dozen I mean, look at let's look at the financial report.
Yeah, currently we have about 3 or 4 contracts that have both streetscape improvements along with other type of incentive program participation
So 3 or 4 or 3 or, let's say.
that are currently out there, yes.
Okay, so
No,
those.
that's not a good, excuse me, not to interrupt, but I mean, there's 8 projects in
Yeah,
one.
yeah, but some of those are these are vacant properties. So that would substantially come over
All these
here.
are vacant, the 600 building,
So,
Marriott.
okay, so where's the, tell me, Heather. Your boss has contradicted you.
No, I'm not contradicting, I'm adding.
No.
Yeah, I'm adding to this
Yeah, so
conversation.
we do have multiple streetscape programs.
Right.
The majority of those are just the streetscape and programs. They aren't in conjunction with another program.
So the answer to my question then would be the 3.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so, and those 3, what is the budget for for those 3?
So we've got one that's,
What's the liability to us on each one of those 3?
there's one's for 40, one that's for 24, one that's for about 17 on the streetscape side.
On the streetscape side. And 40, 24, and 17.
10X.
And I guess you're looking at that, Alyssa, are there any, in each one of those situations, are you looking at a $2 million project?
No. And I was thinking the Premier Samaras, but it's not.
Instead of
200,000. Oh, the total.
thresholds to cross.
But they don't have another incentive. They only have the
Got it.
streetscape.
No, sir, we do not believe so. These are a lot of very good questions.
Thank you.
It's the first time somebody's ever asked for something like this.
So we have this-
Councilman Hernandez, I'm sorry, I'm not that bright to begin with, and it's a little bit difficult for me to concentrate.
Is Agnes Water one too? Yeah. Annex.
Agnes Water is. Agnes Water is,
Okay,
where Oasis Brewing is.
Yeah,
Where we
so-
have paid out for the exterior before the interior is finished.
Yeah, but we did that phases. So
Yeah.
anyway.
So for the Agnes Water project, which is where Oasis Brewery is, we did pay out for the exterior, but that was just an exterior.
Exactly. It was just an exterior. So the ones we're looking at basically is Annex Bar and Central Kitchen are the two main projects right now that have both a streetscape along with other incentive programs that are more interior based.
okay, so the annex bar, so now we're down to 2. All right,
Yes,
good.
yeah, there was one that I thought was the third one, but it's not.
Mr. Zanoni, you care to refute that?
No, I don't, Councilman.
Okay,
I
thank you,
couldn't
thank
really
you.
hear it. I couldn't hear it, so I can't repeat it.
Oh.
Yeah. They can
Okay,
repeat it, and I can repeat it.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear, that's all.
Right, I wasn't, so, but I'll get caught up.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the report right now.
Okay, so the annex bar, remind me of what's the budget on that project? I'm sorry to be all over the place. Here, you understand what I'm doing? I'm trying to
Yes.
figure out what the liability is. You know, we have a $2 million project here, of which already $1 million has been expended to, and we're looking at 69,000. So we're looking at, you know, roughly $1 million has been expended, 69,000 of which it's the part that the public sees. We've got additional property owners that, you know, and I understand. So our deal is Central Kitchen, which that is, that's Michael Lomax, correct?
Richard.
Richard.
Yes.
Richard, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
Richard, I don't know why I call him Mike. Boy, I called him Mike the other day. He answered. So that's Richard Lomax, of which that project is complete. As from my understanding, his issue is that he wants to get the recipes down before he opens a place.
Correct.
So, so he may not have a C, does he have a C of O? No, he does?
Yes, they've completed.
Okay,
their
so
CBO.
now we're down to 1. Okay, so the annex bar, tell me, so right now, I guess the thing is, if we're setting a precedent, well, we've only got one other project on the risk, on the hook. Now, tell me about the annex bar.
So the Annex Bar has received their temporary C of O. They're completing some mechanical and final inspections at this time, but they have not run into a similar situation like we have here with the additional complication of the fire system.
Yeah, I understand.
So
Okay, so basically, we're sort of maybe one that we're gonna have that are at risk. So my point is that setting a precedent, I just don't see how it sets a precedent because of the fact that there would be no one else, and especially if we're gonna consider modifying the contracts in the future, that I don't see that there would be any others that we would be at risk. And so, the consequence of us modifying the contract is what? Help me understand that. Thank you, Amy.
So what we would be doing essentially is paying this out approximately, what, about 2-3 months earlier than we would otherwise if he completes the project on time. My boss has written a paper for the IMLA on economic development projects. In that paper, he explained that in his experience, 100% of projects that were paid out before completion failed. If a project is in a situation where it can't complete without us paying out in advance, the question is, can it run when it's done?
Yeah. Okay, I get that, and you know, I'll be very candid, and especially since the property owner here, and I visited with him, and, you know, what is it, I really appreciate what he's doing. I personally, I kind of feel like the game room type of bar doesn't necessarily always work, but my thing is that I spend a lot of time downtown. In fact, that's why Richard Lomax sees me all the time, because I spend a lot of time there, because it's another place to hang out. And if you got a place with a bunch of big TVs, you know, and I think here's the situation: it's $69,000 for something that we're begging other existing property owners to do, and that was the beginning of the go. So I you know, Mr. Chairman, I would support this. So I think based on what we have, I think the only liability is obviously if the project doesn't come to fruition, well, we still have all the exterior developments that were completed. Number two, what is it, of which, you know, we're whatever property owner has it, they've got $1 million that's already been invested in addition to the 69,000. What is it, then secondly, The only thing I would worry about from a liability standpoint is, in addition, is that if somebody else comes, well, they modified a contract back on, January 24th, 2023, well, then they can do it again on another one, on another item. And I think those are the things that we just need to be able to explain. So anyway, as I said, Mr. Chairman, I would support the reimbursement at this time. Thank
Okay, we got a few more comments. Councilman Hernandez.
Thank you, and Councilman, but I apologize, I didn't know I had the mic on. Hell might be a little colder because I'm agreeing with Councilman Barrera on this, but
Uh-oh.
but I do have some questions here.
You're coming to the dark side.
Whoa, okay. At least he admits he's the dark side.
Must be the beard.
In terms of the C of O issue with the fire suppression system or sprinkler system, is that something that is a new requirement from the fire marshal, or is it something that is inherent to the building that was modified? And I know we have the
Yes, sir. So I have calls in to the fire marshal and the fire inspector to get further clarification on kind of the order of those events. I think they called me back at like 9:28 because this is information we were kind of gathering after we recognized that we were going to need to go further into detail about this recommendation. So we have not been able to piece together all of those details yet, but we do know, based upon just our experience, oftentimes this is something that complicates these projects with these vacant buildings. There is a requirement for a sprinkler system once it gets above a certain level of occupancy. I believe that the property owner purchased the building with the understanding it was operating to one requirement, and the requirement has either because of a failure of the system in the meantime while the building was vacant, or for some reason it just is not at that capacity. And I do want to mention Freddie is a retired firefighter, so I don't think this is an individual that wants to skirt any of those fire requirements, right? He wants to do it the right way.
No, but that's not what I'm asking. What
Okay.
because this was an existing business before that had the sprinkler system in place. It's not something that was added right? Okay. So is this a new requirement from us? Did we change some codes, or is this something that is based on the construction of the building? So what I'm trying to get at, is it us or is it him? In the sense that made the changes?
That I do not know. I just know that it needs to be done, and so we're
Sir, can you
Sir.
speak on the microphone? Just for the record, thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record. please.
Freddie Rodriguez, 326 North Chaparral, owner of Retro. To answer your question, I don't think it was one or the other. It's just, it is what it is. It's the fire code. And when we took over this vacant building, it was already vacant for so many years. And prior to being vacant, it was last used as a nightclub. So at a high occupancy level. Now, I don't know what kind of a sprinkler system or fire panel they had inside at the time, but when I took over, there was already a fire panel. So I started construction after I got the permit to begin construction. And somebody from the city came and did a backflow test, which I failed, but I was unaware. I mean, I just took over the building and started construction. So fire troll came out here and, to the property and said, hey, you need to install a new fire panel so that it communicates with the fire department. And I'm like, well, I'm not open yet. I don't understand. They said, well, no, even though you're under construction, you have to have this panel and have it monitored by the fire department. So I paid a couple $1,000 to put in the fire panel, a new fire panel. And I thought I was done. Like, great, the sprinkler system's here. I just paid for a new fire panel to be communicating with the fire department in the event there's a fire after hours or overnight, no problem. So I'm continuing with the construction. And part of getting my certificate of occupancy is having final inspections. So we call for final inspections. We passed the electrical. We passed the plumbing. We passed, forgot one other thing, but we failed on the fire portion. And in order to get the certificate of occupancy, you need to pass the fire inspection. Well, part of that changes is the certificate of occupancy changed. So we went down to 459 occupancy for one part and 49 people on the back part. So at that time, trying to get my certificate of occupancy and pass the inspections, is when I found out I had to install a brand-new fire panel, which, I mean, if I had known I was gonna do that, I would have paid to get that fire panel back when I paid $2,000 to get this other fire panel. So
Okay, wait,
that
stop there for a second. They asked you to pay for a panel that
To get it
communicates with
monitored.
it, and then you have to get another new one?
Yes.
Why do you need another new one?
Well, I have 2 reports from the fire inspector that I can furnish to you guys, and it has all the reasons on why. I don't remember all the exact, there was a lot of things on there. For example, I had to reroute some of the sprinkler system heads. I got to replace some of the sprinkler heads. I got to replace one of the major pipes for the fire sprinkler system that I wasn't aware of. I had to get a brand-new fire panel because I'm installing, for example, I'm installing an elevator that was not there before. And I didn't have to do the elevator because I was grandfathered in, right? But I wanted to put an elevator because I feel everybody deserves to go upstairs and enjoy the rest of the venue like everybody else does, whether you're in a wheelchair or not. So for example, I had to install elevator hoistway, or I don't know what you call it, but this is called a hoistway. Well, we had to make some changes to this fire sprinkler system, and that elevator has to communicate with the brand new fire system panel, because in the event there's a fire upstairs and the smoke detectors go off upstairs and there's people in the elevator, it's supposed to automatically go downstairs in the event of a fire and communicate with the fire sprinkler system. So I'm just giving an example of these were things that I didn't anticipate, and it is what it is. I mean, $50,000, I have no choice. I need to pay for it so I can get my certificate of occupancy. And if I may add, from the city of Corpus Christi, I do have a certificate of partial completion. So maybe that could be put in the books as far as setting the precedent for future projects. I'm not.
Okay, was the elevator an addition to your plans, or were they the plans that were originally reviewed by the fire marshal and fire inspector?
Everything was reviewed. Yeah, they were part of the
So they
original
were
plans.
part of the, so they didn't tell you at that point that you needed to?
Correct.
Councilman, unfortunately, fire's not here, so
Okay, well, why don't we, I was agreeing with this because I thought that the streetscape program and the interior build-out were 2 separate programs and can be done separately. And if we didn't write the contract that way, that's fine. I think we can modify that and move forward. However, I don't like what I'm hearing in terms of if these plans were reviewed and then there are changes made afterwards that could have been talked about in the front end to prevent him from spending thousands and more in additional costs that we could have told him on the front end. So I want to, with regards to this, I'll end it there, but I'll approve the modification to the contract.
And if I may add one more last thing, I understand the risk, like if I don't open or whatever, I'll even put in the contract, if I don't open for whatever reason, I'll reimburse the city, but I'm so sure I'm going to open, I just need a little bit of help to get to the end. And, we've all heard the thing of people being self-made. Nobody is self-made. Everybody has help from somewhere along the way to the top, right? And I'm not ashamed or afraid to ask for a little bit of help just to get to that finish line. That's it. And if I don't, I put it in the contract on the lawyer fees. I'll reimburse the city for the $69,000 and I'll sign for it in the event I don't open. But I'm not going to open, so it's a moot point for me. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Okay. All right, hold that thought. We've got a couple more questions. Councilman Roy.
My question's going to be brief because I think the other council members pretty much covered a lot of what I was going to ask, but I wanted to go back and just kind of make a statement. One of the things that was said was there was a paper or whatever that was published that about 100% of the time, if we release the funds and the project's not done, then 100% of the time there's failure. I've had limited experience in terms of being part of, government funds used to complete buildings, with the exception of SBA. But I will tell you on the commercial side of banking that I work in, and we have buildings that we rehab, and we inspect those buildings and we go through those projects whether they're new construction or existing construction. And we'll release that money once the item's done or they pledged for it. And it's a risk that you take, but I can tell you most of the time, those projects are completed. I can't call in the last 20 years of a project that somebody put $1 million in and then said, oh, I'm not going to complete that. But, so I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to note that. And I concur. I've listened to everybody. I don't need to rehash a lot of the questions, but I do concur that in this particular case, that we should release those funds. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Klein.
Thanks. I just had a quick question. Is there a time frame on when you plan to open, when all this is going to be completed?
The performance deadline in the agreement is March 2023, and everything is on track to meet that date. So we anticipate completion by that deadline.
So you plan to open already in March?
Oh, we will be opening in March?
I'm planning to open before spring break, so I can give a lot of these, I'm planning to open before spring break so that, a lot of the tourists that come here during that time have another place to enjoy themselves with their families. So absolutely, we're that close.
All right, great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Suckley.
So some of my questions have already been answered based on questions asked by other council. So I'm completely fine with this, and thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for your investment in the community. But I guess me being a greenhorn here on the council, and maybe some changes being made in it, I'd like to maybe be involved in that process to better understand what that looks like long term. But based on the investment Mr. Rodriguez has made here versus what we're giving him back, it's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. But there still is the aspect of the viability of his business plan. Does he have money to open? Does he have working capital? And so there's a lot of other things. Yes, we want to see improvement to the building and the exterior, but we want to have a viable business 12 months from now. We don't want to see it close in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. We want to see viability downtown. So I'd like us to rework the parameters by which we approve these to maybe have some different analytics in there about the investment, loan to value, and also better understanding the viability of the project ongoing.
Sure, Councilman. We are happy to go over that with you and any of the other new board members as well, so you guys can have a thorough understanding of kind of how we've built the programs. I will say that our incentives, because we don't have like an underwriting staff, right? We're not kind of geared up like in the way a bank is to do that. Our incentives really are performance-based and a small portion of the overall project cost. So we keep it below 20% with inflation. There's conversations about us potentially going to, for some really catalytic essential projects, to 30 if that's necessary, and if the capital is not really available elsewhere. But that's a principle that we follow. And then again, it's always performance-based. So in this instance, we're recommending it because he's already spent the money on the exterior. We have the receipts, we have the proof of that, and then we provide that reimbursement. But we would be happy to go over that with you in detail and get your feedback on adjustments.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, before I entertain a motion here real quickly, I had just a couple of comments and maybe one question. Peter, this, in my short time here, this is like at least the third project I've heard where we've got tangled up with fire suppression as a issue with people getting their C of Os. So I think you need to find out a clear, definitive path on how this takes place so you can provide that information to both this board and the council at large, so that we can all understand how this works. If this gentleman had an inspection on his plans by our fire department and was given the go-ahead, and then later on they came in and said, well, you're going to have to make changes. If he made no changes to that original plan, then like Councilman Hernandez says, I'm concerned about why all of a sudden that has to be changed. So these things are, fire suppression systems are extremely expensive. I've worked with them before in past life, but we need to have a clear understanding of how that works exactly. So if you could, get with our fire department people and get them to provide you with how this works. And, does our fire department, like the question in my mind is, he mentioned Fire Troll. Fire Troll is a private industry. They're a private company. So how do they factor into this situation with respect to our fire department doing an inspection? So, we need to have this board and I think our city and council member, and especially the people trying to do business here, need to have a clear understanding of how this works.
Yeah, right, no problem, Councilman. I already made a note to have the fire department review. They're not here, obviously, but they'll
Okay.
review the tapes if they're not listening to the meeting.
Okay.
I would caution us that in this business, I've seen there's always two sides to the story. Unfortunately, the other side's not here,
No,
so I caution that Mr. Rodriguez is probably telling the truth, but there's usually some other nuance that without
Well,
that
I'm
other
not
party being there.
just taking his
Right.
point of view on this. I've had this discussion with at least two other businesses
Right.
who have run up against similar issues with getting their fire. Now, I had a conversation with Mr. Raymond here several weeks ago about one of the businesses that just failed to get a fire inspection. And I said, you know, at the minimum, our city needs to have a little 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that says at the top, at a minimum, you must do this if you're going to open up a business that's going to be retail and have people in it. And number one on that list should be a fire inspection of your plans. And because there's been at least two instances where that has not occurred, and we need to make sure that is happening. Okay, so-
Councilman, if I may make just a comment on that, and I think every case is different, Peter, but it would begin, if it's in your wheelhouse, with, okay, this building used to be this, and now it's going to be this, and therefore this. And I think that, I don't know, you know, the other cases that you're speaking of are not probably downtown specifically.
They were not.
But, right, so that's one issue, Peter. The other would be, Alyssa, in this scenario, what was it, what's it gonna be, and then let's address it proactively. You know, that way it doesn't become, I don't know, might be the first one within downtown, but, or maybe not, maybe it's more, but in general, it has obviously come up. And so that would be, you know, in Peter's wheelhouse, but in yours, I would definitely make that a point of being addressed proactively, so that we know, like, the whole point was, it used to be a bar or a nightclub, and therefore it was one, whatever, panel, and now it's gonna change. Nobody knew that, and that was a cost, right?
I think, Mayor, one of the challenge, I mean, we do have like this or similar things happen kind of regularly, but I think, you know, none of us are robots. We are all trying to figure out how to do what is right for the health and safety of the community, and so we don't want to get a vacant building regardless of if it was missed on an inspection. Like, we just need to do it the right way, and so we hold that kind of as a value where we just want to kind of provide support for the small business as well as for the department and get things done the right way, whether it's paying out for work completed and then just kind of dealing with the fact that there's new fire requirements. We just want the project to move forward, and that's what we're recommending here.
I also want to just add to the conversation, only
Okay,
because
hold on, Councilman. Councilman Collins, you had some comments, thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add to the conversation. I think it really would have helped. I mean, this is my first TIRZ meeting, and just knowing at the front end what he said about the 50,000 and that it had to do with the fire marshal, I think it would have been appropriate to have had someone, you know, from the fire department or the fire marshal, I guess, here, because this was the actual issue. The 50,000 was a result of what Mr. Councilman Hernandez mentioned. So I just wanted to go on record that it would have been appropriate, don't you think, City Manager?
Yes, as Councilwoman, thank you. We do recognize that here at this point, but the issue really is that there's a contract amendment, and it could have been anything. It could have been some other development services inspection. So I would submit that it's not because of the fire panel. It's an increased cost from an unforeseen circumstance that's being attributed to the fire panel, but next time we'll try to have better staff here.
Okay, thank you. It's my first time, so.
Councilman Suckley.
Your comments, Councilman Pusley, about the understanding about the fire suppression, I think, are timely, especially with what we're going to see in the council agenda today with the changes in the codes. I've already had one of the larger property managers on the island reach out to me specifically about better understanding what the cost is going to be for some of their larger high-rise properties out there for the changes in the code. So if we could incorporate that maybe into one conversation, understanding the costs that our folks are going to see to make those changes according to the new code, that'd be great.
Yeah, I agree. So Peter, we'll rely on you and your staff to
We'll make sure Al Raymond obviously will be presenting on that item, but we'll make sure the fire staff's here. They are 3 years behind times, even with the update, and all of our codes are for life safety. Right. It's not that we're trying to charge people more money for inspections. It's about providing facilities that are safe for persons to go into, whether it's a home or a business or some type of a club or something of that sort. But we'll make sure fire's there. I would add that the city in the last 4 years has hired a fire marshal that up to this point had not had one, and the city was outsourcing all fire reviews to a private company up in Fort Worth. So we do have better service on the ground for fire inspections. In the past, I had heard that it took months to get that final inspection, and usually it was something to do with fire reviews, but through due diligence and adding a position in the last 4 years, we do have a staff person, a fire marshal, which is a change from the contract services up in Fort Worth that we used to use. So there are improvements. I know nobody really likes codes and following the codes, but again, they're for safety of individuals that go into the building. Yes, but we'll have fire staff here for that item.
Okay, I think Councilman Hunter is dying to make a motion.
He did. I think he did.
Make a motion?
I don't know if I had my
Councilman-
microphone on last time, but I would like to make a motion.
I've drafted one for you, if I could read it out.
Here, I'll come get it.
Better.
Based on the conversation, I've kind of changed what I drafted, so I'm just going to read it out, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Great.
Motion authorizing an amendment to the agreement with the 326 North Chaparral LLC that allows payment of $69,000 upon completion of the streetscape and safety improvements on the condition that such funds must be immediately repaid in the event that the project is not completed by the deadline.
Move as stated.
Second.
You seconded, Mr. Klein? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, do we need an executive session on the next one or not? What was the final decision?
So for,
For item 4.
How are we on time? So if we were going to discuss item 4 today, we would request that it be an executive session. If we need it for open session, we request tabling this item till a February meeting, so we can make sure that we don't have any proprietary information or anything that's otherwise needs to be confidential in this public forum. So we had prepared for an executive session until this morning, so we'll need a bit of time to
Okay, all right.
make sure that.
All right, well, we're at 10:20, so let's move this along quickly. So I'll move that we go into executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code 551.071, and we will be back shortly. Thank you.